All right, welcome back. This is still the Polity reaching you live from Abuja. Like I said before the break, we'll be delving into the first words and the assumption of office of the various ministers who were appointed by President Bola Tinubu. The swearing in was on Monday, and the official assumption of office took place later that day and continued into yesterday. We've had some rather standard, or should I say, statements by some of these ministers. We'll be taking a look at these ministers, their portfolios, how well they fit, and generally what the expectations and implications are for Nigeria and the president's agenda. I've been joined now in the studio by social scientist and political analyst, Dr. Mefor, to speak on this matter. Good afternoon, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you for hosting me once more.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
All right, so I'd just like to get your general thoughts first of all. We saw the ministers stand before President Tinubu and others and swear their oath of office. What's your take on, what we're seeing so far with the people that emerged and the portfolios they were given?
I think on the whole, the nation side a relief that the long wait, 3 months wait for putting in place a cabinet by the president had actually at least come to an end. And it's something. Before the inauguration of the new cabinet, we had the opportunity to look at the CVs of the various minister nominees. And I mentioned here that save for maybe about 5, most others are average. And I also worried about the coming of some characters that are sort of being recycled. Somehow somebody like El-Rufai that falls into that mold didn't eventually make the list. Whether or not he would still come along is yet to be seen. But by and large, I think we have enough that can work if given the latitude they require, the legal framework, and the political will that must come from the president and only the president alone. The reason is simple. The problem of Nigeria, is twofold: structure, leadership. And because we are running presidential democracy, you discover that the buck actually stops at the president's table. There is what we call a collective responsibility, but that applies only to a parliamentary system of government. And that's not what Nigeria is running. Nigeria is running a presidential democracy. What that means is that the president is the one and only. He hires and fires. It means that every person else is actually there as an aide of the president. And I also think that aptly, President Tinubu described his position as that of the driver, the ministers he inaugurated, conductors, and the rest of Nigerians he saw as passengers. In other words, he sees himself as the driver and accepting responsibilities for whatever goes right or goes wrong. It means that by and large, he takes a credit or blame. In other words, the people he has nominated and deployed to various ministries will have to try to live up to their expectations. And whatever they do, yes, ultimately would be to the credit of the president. But again, in practice, you want to see that they themselves are also setting their own personal records, especially the new ones. And then those of them that are giving some critical rules. Let me single out somebody like Nyesom Wike, the former governor of Rivers State, now deployed to FCT as minister. So much is expected of him, and he is aware of that. And in his first press conference, hours after his inauguration as Minister of FCT, betrayed much of that, because he showed clearly that he understood the problems of the city, and was able to hint where he needed to really move, things he needed to really touch, if he has to restore Abuja master plan and Abuja master image. There is something about Wike, for me, love him or hate him, you can't take one thing away from him. He is very strong-willed. He is somebody that has very deep sense of mission and keen sense of vision as well. In other words, he is somebody that is independent-minded. He has very fair and firm idea of where he believes that he should take Abuja to. And that, to me, I think is fundamental. If you also look at some of the things he identified, for me, I think he's right, because since the days of Rufai as a minister of FCT some 20 years ago, Abuja has carried on as if we have never had a minister who understands or who understood what we may call the job specifications, the job characteristics of that position of the minister of FCT. The immediate past minister of FCT, Bello, was just a number. He left no single legacy project, nothing. Abuja deteriorated under his watch. And Wike is saying that we need to turn all this around. And I think it's very important. The issue of desecration of the master plan, the issue of deterioration of even basic things as basic as sanitation, hygiene, orderliness in the city. It's as if we have deliberately veered off from the original master plan of Abuja to build a nation of anything goes. Recall the reason Nigeria left Lagos. Nigeria, relocated the Federal Capital Territory from Lagos because of lack of planning, because of lack of, what you may call livable, being able to put in place a livable city. And we relocated to Abuja, going, I think, Decree 76 of 1976, enacted by Murtala Mohammed in his 6-month stint as head of state. The Agoda panel that discovered Abuja as the center of Nigeria and brought us here. They made an expansive, very ambitious plan to have a city that will be 2 to 3 times the size of Lagos. In other words, we have an opportunity to have a city that is planned from the scratch, planned from the scratch to the point that it will be able to match any other city you can find anywhere in the world. But this is not what Abuja has turned out to be. There are reasons for it. And that is why I think Wike is the kind of person you need to deal with this. Some of the mistakes are no longer the kind of mistakes you can correct. For example, the indigenes of FCT are not supposed to be in Abuja. If you read the master plan, I have had the opportunity to look at the master plan, and some of the basic provisions of that master plan. Yeah. The inhabitants of Abuja were supposed to be resettled in the contributing cities. Contributing states. There are 3 to 4 states that contributed land areas that make up what you call the Federal Capital Territory. Nasarawa State, Kogi State, Plateau, maybe 1 or 2 others. But you and I know that the indigenes of FCT were not relocated. Because what you needed to do was to move them to those contributing states and let them become part and parcel of those contributing states and not part and parcel of FCT. It's a gross error, a very major mistake committed by the previous administrations. Now that you have them here, every minister of Abuja has to grapple with that reality. Wike has to. And his inaugural press conference, I also saw that he recognized the fact that there is need for consultation to carry everybody along. there are other problems. The problems of deliberately distorting the master plan. For example, the issue of the greenways, the parks, the parks, the green areas, and so on and so forth. Because everybody is heading to that Abuja city center, the successive administrations have been recovering in piecemeal these green areas and parks and converting them into residential areas and office complexes. It's a distortion of the master plan. I don't know how Wike is going to go about, trying to really recover such areas. It's a tough one, very, very tall order, but it's doable because El-Rufai demonstrated that it could be done, and he did quite a bit of that. But again, there is also the issue of lack of what you may call a mass housing in Abuja. There's no mass housing. If you look at the slums of Abuja, these are built around the inhabitants of Abuja, where you have local chiefs. These local chiefs are the ones giving land to individuals to construct makeshift structures to enable them to survive because they have no clear alternatives. So as an agenda for Wike, he has to think in terms of mass housing. I don't know how he's going to go about that, but you need to do something in that direction, because those who are building makeshift structures to take care of themselves are doing so because they do not have viable alternatives. One major reason I think this is the issue, over concentration on the Abuja city center, is because the satellite towns are not developed. El-Rufai talked about developing the satellite towns. He didn't stay long enough to really see that.
What would that look like with the fact that I've actually had conversations with original inhabitants, and they spoke of this congestion, where they say during early morning working hours, you see massive influx from these satellite towns into the city center.
That's it.
And then the city center empties in the evening.
Correct, and weekends as well.
Yes, but the people are going there for a reason, because works.
That's the problem.
So what can be done? How do you move perhaps the ministry to Gwagwalada?
For me, look, listen, you just said it. That is just one radical decision that must be taken. I'll give you instances. What is the Ministry of Defense doing in a place like Area 10, Gariki? What is the Ministry of Agriculture doing in Area 11? There are other ministries that can more conveniently operate from the satellite towns. I just mentioned two. The Ministry of Defense, for example, doesn't need to be here. And beyond that, the three components of the military, the Navy, the Army, and the Air Force, are all in Area 8. It's unnecessary. They are constrained. They need to move away from this city center and go out to a place where they can have a space to really do their work. That is what you need to do. Once you move many of these MDAs away from the city center, naturally the contractors, the developers, the workers, and the generality of Nigerians will move with these MDAs to where they are, because they are following them to the city center, because that is where they can be found. If you have something to do with the Ministry of Agriculture and they are in Kwale or Gwagwalada, do you need to come to the city center? You make your way to where they are, and the workers will live around Gwagwalada where you have the ministry. These are the kind of hard decisions that Wike will have to take. There are many other decisions that he must take. You see, like I said, I was reading the master plan. The inhabitants of FCT are supposed to be found sparingly around the parks as part of the natural habitat. Do you understand what I'm saying? And not necessarily part of the city dwelling. Do you get the point? And that way, your original conceptualization of Abuja will be realized. Original conceptualization of Abuja is to have a place that is truly a no man's land. That is why you needed to have paid the original inhabitants of FCT and resettled them, paid them well, resettled them, because there is no difference really if you had really paid them well and rebuilt their settlements in the contributing states, it's a matter of shifting them away from the location where they were in 1976 upward to 1979, when physical development of Abuja commenced in earnest. This wasn't done. They allowed the inhabitants to be here. Now, inhabitants of Abuja have seen that it is better for them to fight for integration into Abuja master plan than relocate. For example, like Wike himself even recognized. So somebody gets a plot of land for 200,000, and 2, 3, 5 years down the line, he's looking for who would buy that for 1, 2, 3 billion. So you can see that themselves are saying that Abuja has become something else, and therefore Abuja becomes something they have to stake and get a piece of. It was not supposed to be so. But because that mistake, that error of judgment has already been committed, you just have to plan on how to get on with them, because they are here already. I recall the days of General Jeremiah Timbotoseni as the Minister of FCT. He started giving the local chiefs staff of office, constituting almost what we may call Council of Chiefs in FCT. That was an aberration. But we did all that. There are mistakes you commit. You have no opportunity of correcting again, because you can no longer relocate them outside the Federal Capital Territory. You can relocate them within the Federal Capital Territory, but certainly not outside it anymore. One more thing I also think should be done in Abuja, as far as I am concerned, is to carefully restructure the entire place to make provisions for upper class, middle class, and lower class. Go to everywhere. All cities in the world have, places for the upper class, middle class, and the lower class. Abuja shouldn't be constructed as if it is exclusively meant for the upper class alone.
Wasn't this part of the original plan, where areas like Kubwa, Lugbe were designated for low-income earners?
Yes, that's it. But then it's not possible.
Do you think there should be another strata to that?
There should be more strata, because if you recall, Abuja, when fully developed, was conceived to have a maximum population of 2 to 3 million. Today Abuja should have exceeded that figure, and yet you are not quite done with even the first ring of development. Yes, we have started doing something within the second ring, but not much, because if you notice, that is why you have these flyovers. The flyovers mark the end of the first phase, the first ring, and then the connection to the second ring of Abuja. So you need to understand the fact that the original plan of Abuja is being affected by certain realities. For example, insecurity in far north is moving a lot of Nigerians down to FCT. Many Nigerians are living far north and congregating to Abuja as a place they could find security and succor. What that means is that in the next couple of years, Abuja will hit 10 million. This will mean that a place like Kubwa, Okwali, and others will no longer be sufficient. By that I mean you need to plant more satellite towns. You need to plant more. And planting more means infrastructure. You need to provide water, you need to provide roads, you need to provide electricity. Let me give you an example. Those of us who live in Abuja and know the place well, if you understand the Apo axis connects, a place we call Pegi and Kuje through the back. You understand? That road is not done. Once you open that road, you will discongest whatever is happening on Airport Road and allow people who have lands there to build. Estates can spring up along that path because it is contiguous to the city itself. It's less than 10 minutes if you really open that road. And of course, if you go further down, the Jekwe axis, connects Karu, connects Karu in Nasarawa State through the back as well. where you have as Orozo, you know, the Orozo angle, Jikwo Orozo axis. If you connect that road, there is a bridge I know ought to have been built by now, but the road is not built. If you do that, road, you will provide a major artery that will decongest what is happening between AYA and the Nyanyan, Karu, Maraba axis. Those are the kind of things that, you know, need to be done. Physical development. So a Mr. Project in the person of Wike has his work cut out, as far as I am concerned.
All right, you know, but he has begun, like you said, with at least noting what he feels like.
Oh yeah, yes.
Just today, I believe he made a bold statement. He has he rolled out in his official vehicles with the plate number FCT01.
Yeah.
I guess that's to announce his arrival. You know, word on the, you know, based on the valuations we are seeing, some of those cars are worth over 100 million. Is it dollars? Well, I confirmed that.
It can't be dollars.
Well, it can't be dollars. Yeah, that's not possible.
No, it can't be dollars.
It should be millions or thereabouts. Well,
yes.
That aside, that's just Governor Wike being Governor Wike, or Minister Wike, Honorable Minister Wike being Honorable Minister Wike. Let's talk about another minister who has made a bold, what I say, projection or claim during her assumption of office. The Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Betta Adu, says the federal government is determined to lift 133 million Nigerians out of poverty. I'd like to get your thoughts on this statement. Is this a statement that someone, or pardon me, a minister in charge of humanitarian affairs has the capacity to make? Or is this a statement that is best reserved for, say, finance? Especially because her ministry has been sort of, will I say, reduced? It used to be Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management, and I can't remember the last bit of it. But now we have a little bit of it now added to Ministry of Health.
The social...
yes, social development. Yes.
Social development.
So I wonder, such statements, do you think we might be saying
well, you see, when many of them made their statements yesterday, many of those statements are quite outlandish and betrayed the fact that they haven't quite gone through what you may call the job specifications. And what Betta Adu said is an example of that kind of statement made on the whim without having the true mandate spelled out in specifics so that the individual ministers would understand their bounds. Certainly, she is not in a position to pull even 1 million Nigerians out of poverty. That is not really her job. Her job is mainly poverty alleviation. And I don't think it has much to do with job creation. I don't think so. It also have to include a job creation. If that is what she wishes to do, I'm sorry, she may not be able to do that. Her job, like I said, is poverty alleviation, disaster interventions, and all that. And I have looked at the activities of one or two of our predecessors. Yes, a bit of that, intervening, for example, when they go to places like IDP camps, they try to provide some kits that would enable the stranded people there to do one or two things for themselves. But that's a far cry for the kind of intervention we are looking at. It's good she mentioned it, recognizing the fact that 133 million Nigerians are now living in what we call multi-dimensional poverty. But being able to do that is, for me, not if employment is not created in this administration, her ministry will be the last to be held responsible. You can see why it is not really within her purview. It has its intervention to alleviate suffering and poverty.
Yeah, but that is a statement. 133 million Nigerians out of poverty. That's what she said.
But she can't. That's what I'm saying. Because when you want to create jobs, in Nigeria, you start from the philosophy of the kind of government and economy you want to create. One is, what is the economic philosophy of the Tinubu presidency? a private sector driven economy, fine. That has nothing to do with disaster management. Private sector driven means empowering the private sector to be able to drive the economy. How do you do that? You look at the enablers. Number one enabler, security, is not within her purview. Number two enabler, power, infrastructure. Do you understand that? It's not the one that is about works. Do you understand that? So we will spare her until she gets into the groove of her office. She will understand her bounds. But again, like I said, since President Tinubu has indicated long before that he would want a private sector driven economy, I do think that he has to pay attention specifically to these three areas I have mentioned. That is why I was worried when he appointed Bagudu, former governor of I think Kebbi State, Kebbi, and then Matawale, former governor of Zamfara, as minister of defense and minister of state for defense. For me, I've checked their records as governors. I really don't think they did brilliantly well, where it came to security. Well, so only Tinubu himself knows why he believes they can handle.
There's a question there. I've heard this idea. I just want to see what you think about it. That President Tinubu put those people in charge because while they experienced some level of insecurity in their own states, they made mention of the fact that they were just they were not really in charge of security, so to speak. It was a federal issue. They didn't have enough power. And
so now they have the power.
Yes.
They know the problems. If that is the reason the president took such a critical decision, he may soon discover that it's not a problem of a structure alone, that there are other issues that border on personal competency. Do you understand what I'm saying? I really don't see these two as cut out for security. I would have even preferred Wike as a minister of defense, because he was in the eye of the storm where it comes to Niger Delta militancy. He was there, and Rivers, recorded relative secure environment under Wike. Do you understand that? So if you had drafted somebody like Wike to Ministry of Defense, I can understand it and have the hope that given the antecedent that he was coming from the eye of the storm, he should be able to confront it on a larger scale Nigeria level. These two, well, they're already appointed and deployed. All we have to do is to give them benefit of the doubt. And that is the much I can really say, because if I look at security situation in Zamfara in the last 8 years under the watch of Matawale, I don't know, I'm not sure I have that confidence that it is only a problem of being called the chief security officer in name without the enabling powers. What I think the Tinubu presidency ought to be looking at in response to that statement made by Matawale, Bagudu, and other governors, not only them, because truly, constitutionally, the governors are only chief security officers in name. You need to amend the constitution. All you have to do is to work on the constitution that centralizes policing system in Nigeria. And the three leading presidential candidates, Tinubu, Atiku, and Obi, even Kwankwaso, all say that, look, that we must decentralize policing system. In other words, if it is time for us to have state police, community police, there ought to be a technical committee in place by now, advising the presidency on how to go about it. I have had interactions, discussions with many placed Nigerians, even some former top police officers, AIG, DIG, IGs. I've discussed this issue with them, and they keep saying that, look, Nigeria is not ripe for state police. I said that rather than say Nigeria is not ripe for state police, and you are a federal system of government, why don't we put a body in place that can study how to make it work? For example, out of the 26 countries of the world that practice federalism, of which Nigeria is one, only Nigeria is practicing centralized policing system. So why don't we do something about that? A place like the US practices up to 5 layers of policing. Up to 5 layers. And we are practicing only one. So if you don't have security because of centralization of your policing system, you critically think through it and find ways you can resolve the problem. So I actually agree that many Nigerian political leaders are likely to abuse the state police. Yes, I agree. But is the federal police not being abused as it is? So the issue of abuse is there already. What can we do to cure the abuse that is likely to occur? I think there are ways around it. It is not appointing Motawale to say to see if he would succeed or fail. May leave us in a bigger quagmire.
All right, we'll keep watching and observing. In the meantime, our phone lines are open, so you can call in to make your contributions or ask your questions. But let's talk about, before we got to this stage with the portfolios announced. I remember we had a discussion, and I think you hinted about how this analysis is much broader, much deeper when we are aware of what minister is attached to what portfolio. So that being said, I'd like to get your thoughts. How far do you think knowledge of the portfolio is really needed? I'll give 2 instances here. The Minister of State for Environment and Ecological Management, Ishak Salako, I don't know if he said it offhand or if he didn't mean to say it, or he said it, he slipped out of his mind or his mouth. He said that he's a public health, or I can't remember the phrase, but he's from the health sector. And then he said, I quote, "I have little knowledge about the environment." That's what he said. Yeah, he's the Minister of State for Environment. So that being said, is that a thing where it's a downer or it's a bad look for him? Or is it a case where he doesn't necessarily need to know the in and outs of everything? He just needs to be able to manage. Also, we have with the Minister of State for Education, who is a doctor, I believe, but he did lay out his own foray into the education sector, and I guess that can be said to be enough. But that being said, how much do you think these ministers should be aware of their specific portfolios?
Yeah, well, for me, I keep talking about job specifications and job characteristics, and one being in a position to discharge responsibilities adequately, creditably, as a minister of the Federal Republic, needs to have very basic knowledge in the area of deployment. But the person doesn't necessarily have to be an expert in the field, especially if it is a field that is eclectic and generic in nature. Do you understand what I'm saying? Some ministries are like that. Some ministries are not as technical as some. For example, I recall you and I, we were talking about Boson Tijani, and we were praying that he should be taken to communications, right? Yeah. And digital economy. Yeah. And that's where he is. Yes. That's a square peg in a round hole, in a square hole. If he fails there, I think he has himself to blame, because that's his forte. Do you understand that? Yeah, but if you think about the Minister of State for Environment, the substantive minister hasn't come. Yeah. He's still expected from Kaduna, right? As people say, that that slot is reserved when the slot for Kaduna is filled up. When the person comes from Kaduna, if he's as a novice as the Minister of State, then there is really a problem. But if it's not, the junior minister will have to tag along the senior minister. Do you understand what I'm saying? And vice versa. All right, Dr. Lo, let's just quickly take a call before we continue. Good afternoon. What's your name and where are you calling from? Good afternoon. All right, we lost that call. And vice versa. Like I said, it's important that you have some basic understanding of the ministry. Otherwise, you may really have to struggle in the initial months. Somebody like Festus Kayamo is deployed to aviation. aviation and aeronautic aerospace, something like that. You know, the place is to be technical, and he has to really work around the clock. And of course, I had him speak to the staff and the press. He talked about studying the reports they were made in 2016 and say, yes, that's where to start. You really need to go back to the scratch, to the basics, because you've never had the opportunity to really think through that area. But as a minister, let's understand one thing here. A minister is, first and foremost, not the accounting officer of the ministry. Many may think he is the accounting officer. He's not. It is the permanent secretary that is the accounting officer. The minister is the chief policy driver. He may not initiate the policy, because don't forget that the president already has, you know, the policy overview in this area. So yours as a minister now is to give effect, right? You now have to give effect to the thoughts of the president in the area of deployment. The thoughts here means that the president already has an idea of what he wants to do in that area. But, you know, the thought at that level will be generic, it will be general, it will be of general kind. The specifics will have to be worked out
by the minister.
All right,
just hold that thought a bit. Let's hear from this caller. Good afternoon, you're on to the Polity. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Ben, calling from Port Harcourt.
All right, please go ahead.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Loud and clear.
I'm calling from Port Harcourt.
We can hear you.
So, my own question is that, don't you think some of these ministers appointed is a way of compensation? Because I'm based in Port Harcourt, and during the election, we knew who we voted for. The way the whole thing turned around to favor one particular party is still something we cannot really explain. So when we saw that our own former governor Wike was appointed FCT minister, to me I saw it as a way of compensating the dirty work done during the election. So in that case, should we believe that these guys will be able to deliver in terms of the office they occupy today?
All right.
Yeah, I get his point. You know, yes, Wike worked for the president, like most other appointees. You know, and if they are compensated for doing the work for the president, I don't see anything that is wrong there. This is politics. Do you get the point? Now, I think that era, that time is gone. We're talking about governance now. How will they really govern? How will they help the president to actualize his dream? Don't forget that even the victory of the president is still before the Court of Appeal. But as of today, he is the president of Nigeria. There is nothing you can do about that until the Court of Appeal and ultimately the Supreme Court say otherwise. Do you get the point? So until they say otherwise, we should be talking about how to move our nation forward. Government is a continuum. Even if Tinubu exists tomorrow, the few months he has had as an opportunity, he is making the best of it. Do you get the point? And the ministers he has appointed and deployed, how will they fare? I think that is the issue before us at the moment. Whether Wike did a dirty job and all that, I don't live in Port Harcourt, so I don't know what happened there. You know, we will allow the tribunal and the Supreme Court to tell us what happened in the 2023 general election. And that said, what I am saying is that cognate experience is very fundamental in deployment, very fundamental in deployment. If you want the individual not to struggle. Do you understand that? However, in ministries, you have what we call a mandated departments. These are mandated departments headed by directors, right? You know, these directors, most of them are all experts in the area. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. In the mandate of the ministry, you have key staff at directorate level that know precisely what ought to be done. And they have been doing this, for decades. To become a director in Nigeria, you need to be on the job for average of about 20 years. Do you understand that? So I therefore I believe that the minister nominees as they have now become ministers and deployed accordingly will have they have something to fall back on. They are not going there to reinvent any wheel. Do you understand what I'm saying? However, there are several deployments I think are actually very apt. I just mentioned the example of Wike. I think Wike's appointment is apt, even though if I had my way, I would have moved Wike to defense, to works, to power. Do you understand what I'm saying? This would have been my first choice for him, because these places I consider far more dire to the overall economy, overall the survival of Nigeria and all that. And somebody like him is needed in such a place if you want to turn the areas around. There are some appointments that are really good. The Minister of Education, the guy is coming from a thorough background. He used to be the DG of law college, the law school in Buhari. That was when I met him one-on-one, a long time ago when he was there. And from there he moved and became the Vice Chancellor of Bayes University, which of course is a foremost private university in Nigeria as of today. So I believe that somebody like that, with his experience, his training, basically he's a lawyer, but then he's been in educational administration all this while for the better part of the past 1 decade. I don't see why he would not be able to make his mark in education. So I expect that there should be a remarkable departure from the lackluster performance that the nation was subjected to under the past minister, Adamu, who of course told us he knew no jack about education. So this case now is a bit different, because the prof knows enough about education. He has been an administrator. He has run it at 2 levels, the law school and at university level. He should be able to make his stay in the education sublime. So whenever he is to depart, he must have left his footprints on the sands of time. That I believe. There are others. If you look at the case of Betaido, we talked about earlier, when she was talking about lifting, you can see that zeal to see poverty off Nigeria. That's a good one. She has been an activist, more or less, a woman of the masses. Now she has an opportunity, to really help the Nigerian masses, be their face, be their voice, be their helper. To me, it's a very key appointment that is likely to result in a remarkable change where it comes to interventions in poverty alleviation and poverty reduction in Nigeria. Beyond that, also there are other similar appointments which you can find here and there that we expect should be able to put the country through. There are some I really don't understand. They appear too curious to me, like a deployment of a Dela Alake to solid minerals. I don't know. I really don't know.
Well, speaking to journalists, he said that he requested for that ministry. I wonder what you make of that.
Well, if he requested for that ministry and he does not have any specific training and participation in the area, then he has his own reasons, which is yet to make clear. And they also had him say that the way to go, given the fact that hydrocarbon is on the decline, what that means is that the ability of Nigeria to earn from petroleum products will continue to decline, and we need to do something about our solid minerals. That's a very good one, but I don't know him to be an investment expert and all that. So I really don't know. As a minister, maybe he has an idea of what can be done. Don't forget, many of the issues that will beset these ministers are actually constitutional. For example, the problem you have in the solid mineral sector is constitutional, because solid mineral is on the exclusive list of the Constitution. What that means is that if you are a minister in Abuja, what cooperation or what responsibility will you be able to apportion to a state governor to get the kind of cooperation you need to be able to operate in the various states? In a place like Zamfara, it's artisanal mining that is going on there. People are mining gold, all sorts, and selling to foreign entrepreneurs, and the local miners are paid the peanuts. If you want this to happen, what he envisages to happen, he has to first get the president to push for amendment of the Constitution to move solid minerals away from exclusive list to concurrent list. By that, federal government can go into legal alliance with the states to be able to harness the solid minerals that are found in the various states. I keep talking about Nasarawa State here. Nasarawa has the highest number of solid mineral deposits in Nigeria, and yet is the poorest. Why is Nasarawa the poorest? Because the state government of Nasarawa State cannot go into solid mineral. So you need to move it to concurrent list. That will give the states the legal power to come into partnership with the federal government. It's just like what happened with the electricity sector. The federal government has been able to sign away the issue of electricity or power, as it were, away from exclusive list to concurrent list. What this means now is that the federal government can go into direct alliance with any state or a collection of states to be able to develop regional power grids, and things like that, and they share whatever they generate. The state or states involved will take their own portion. Federal government will take theirs into the national grid and redistribute accordingly. That's the kind of thing that must happen in the solid mineral if Alake will succeed.
All right, that's fair enough. Let's still talk a little bit more now about the issue of economy.
Yeah.
When that is involved, what do you really see in terms of the Minister of Finance? And I believe he has
what he do is okay. He's an economist. So
what do you expect in the future? I assume the current CBN governor, acting CBN governor, is only there on a temporary basis. And we have these two sides of a coin, with monetary and fiscal.
Correct.
How do you expect this to really work out? We have Wale done already. What do you think will be the next master?
For me, the CBN governor that is acting at the moment is a mechanical engineer. It is too risky to hand him the CBN on permanent basis. This is my view. I may be wrong. You understand what I'm saying? I would prefer an economist, a banker, somebody who is coming from that sector. You see, in the banking sector, you have the line and staff, the support staff. You have engineering and stuff. That doesn't make you a banker. Do you get my point? That you are an engineer in the maintenance department of a bank. Doesn't, even though you are in a topmost bank in Nigeria, it doesn't make you a banker. We know who the bankers are. Those who understand this work, the nitty-gritty. They understand the behavior of currency, local and international. They understand the behavior of the economy.
But what do you think went wrong with the former CBN governor, Godwin Mefor?
I think Mefor ended up a disaster because of what I think should be considered. Let me put it this way: personal shortcomings. I think he was experienced enough where he was coming, was coming from I think Zenith or something like that. I think he was experienced under Zenith. I think he's Zenith. He was coming from Zenith. Sanusi came from First Bank and stuff like that. He did not allow himself to discharge his responsibilities as warriors as they were. He didn't discharge them in a way and manner as to put professionalism in front of him. He became too political, played into the hands of the cabal. So most of the things he was doing for politics and not really for the growth of the economy. Do you understand that? So in other words, for him, satisfying the clique he considered was in a position to sustain his stay there was far more important to him than stabilizing the monetary aspect of the economy. Many of the decisions he took were really wrong-headed. They were bound to end in a way and manner they did, like the Naira recoloration or redesign policy. It was not supposed to be. The time it came, the way it was implemented, they were all pointing to failure. But he went on nonetheless because of political reasons. When you say you are redesigning the color of the Naira because you want to stop vote buying, it has nothing to do with the monetary policy. It's essentially politics. Because, you can't claim that buying of votes during elections, as evil as it is, you understand what I'm saying, would constitute a problem to monetary policy itself. Do you understand what I'm saying? He was arguing that much of the money that should be in the bank vaults was out there in private hands and therefore presumably hoarded by the politicians, and they would deploy him to manipulate the election. Is that the only way to call the money out? You could have done that recoloration outside the election cycle, assuming that is your goal. So you don't mix up politics and economics. You don't do that. You are not a politician. In fact, the office of the central bank governor all over the world is the most conservative office. The person to occupy that office is supposed to be very, very conservative. You can be seen but never heard. You don't need to be seen. But we saw a Mefor even struggling to contest the presidency.
All right, let's move over to back to finance.
Yes.
Do you think the way it has been named now might have a difference? We have Mr. Wale Edun is the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy.
Yeah.
Do you think this nomenclature has an impact on?
No, they're trying to bring back the Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, years. Yes, because Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala actually coordinated the economy beyond the running the finance and gave effect to the stability of the polity generally. She was able to win Nigeria off foreign loan. She got debt forgiveness of well over $12 billion. Our debts went to zero, under her. And you can see that kind of management. It went beyond being the Minister of Finance. She was able to permit all other ministries that had one thing or the other to do with the economy, like planning, like CBN, like so many, even Ministry of Foreign Affairs. She was able to really coordinate much of this, and this is the kind of thing I suspect that President Tinubu wants to replicate. Whether he'll be able to do that, it remains to be seen. It's a matter of the future. I worry for one thing. I don't know where Wale Edun was when Tinubu unleashed the twin anti-masses policy on the polity, removal of fuel subsidy and the floating of the Naira. I really don't know if he recommended such policies, they are not in themselves, bad policies. No, I don't think they are bad in themselves. But the timing, the way and manner they were implemented, and I also, even though I'm not an economist, but I believe that you cannot unleash the two together. Do you understand what I'm saying? And let me repeat my earlier call that President Tinubu has to suspend at least one of them in this time to enable the economy to escape depression. Do you understand that? Yeah. If you notice now, if a government doesn't move and insist, the independent marketers are already ready to review the pump price of a fuel to over 700 naira. They already said so. So government is trying to behind the scene pull them back.
Are you sure there isn't a reintroduction of partial subsidy?
That's what I'm saying. That's why I said that the president must suspend one. He has to. Do you understand what I'm saying? For me, what the president has to do, and what I do has to really be the one thinking this through, because that's his ministry now. He has to understand the fact that these two policies cannot coexist. If they do, because Nigeria is not exporting anything, do you understand that? The Naira will continue to slide. As long as Naira continues to slide, and there is no drastic fall in the price of crude in the international market, for example, from $80 per barrel to something like $50 per barrel, the price of pump fuel, it will continue to go up. That's the truth. You don't need to be an economist to understand that inflation, that the only way to deal with inflation is to produce more than you consume. The same way, if you want your local currency, if you want your local currency to gain strength over the pound, over the euro, over the dollar, you have to export more than you import. It's very simple economics. You don't need a professor to teach you this. In other words, if they want to run such policies that will depend on our capacity to produce and export, do you understand that? And we are not in a position to do so in the next 1 to 2 years, why don't you stagger the implementation? Since you know you will never benefit from it in the short run, even in the medium term, you need to wait till the long term before you be able to benefit. And if you notice, the economy, as far as I am concerned, is already being depressed. The figures may not betray the position yet, but ultimately it will show. Why I say it will show so is, if you look at the behavior of staple foods, food items in the market, they have all gone up by more than 300%. All, including bread, gari, fufu,
that is
everything.
That is true. We've almost run out of time now, so I'd like to get your thoughts on what Nigerians should be looking out for. President Tinubu has spent 2 months plus.
About 3 months now.
3, yeah. So these ministers are just coming in.
Yeah.
So what do you think Nigerians should start to look out for that would show signs that we're moving in the right direction? Well,
we want to see redirection of some of these critical policies. For me, that's the first indicator that he now has a team that is thinking. I mentioned two, flotation of the Naira and the removal of fuel subsidy. One has to be halted from now. I didn't say cancel. Halt it. Stop, floating the Naira for now. Fix the Naira somewhere around 500, even less, per dollar. Keep it there for some time, for the next 6 months. Whatever it takes to keep it there. So that the volatility that has been experienced in the economy, especially in the monetary system, will vanish. It will enable people to plan even their daily lives. As at now, there is what is called run on the economy. Originally you would think that run, only happens in banks. But now it is now the entire economy. People are now converting their Naira to dollars and other hard currencies. That is explaining why you can't find the dollar anywhere. And you see, until you are able to deal with such factors, nothing will change. Nigerians ultimately won't change. And the only way they want to see change is that, first and foremost, that the price of fuel, pump price of fuel, has come down reasonably. Anything less than 550 to 500, the initial move, will you be able to bring back the fuel pump price to 540? That was the first move. If you're able to bring it there, do something to keep it there for 6 months at least before you review again. And once you are able to do some of these things, you will now begin to regain confidence of Nigerians. Otherwise, they will be waiting for you in the wing to fail.
All right, that's fair enough. I think it's a fair thing to ask for. Governor Wike has already identified what he feels is a short-term goal, which he says is the street lights. He says people are complaining and he's going to solve that. So these are some of the things we'll be looking at. Thank you so much for coming, Dr.
The pleasure is mine.
All right, that's all we'll take on the program. And don't forget, the Polity comes to you live from Abuja every weekday, 2 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. Tomorrow, Mercy Babajide will be here to see you through the program. Thank you so much for joining us today. Bye for now. I am Amadin Ogbewe.